Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is an internationally recognized leader in the performing arts, award-winning, multidisciplinary Mohawk artist, Santee Smith. She is one of Canada's leading dance artists and holds McMaster University degrees in physical education and psychology, along with a Master of Arts in Dance from York University. Smith trained at Canada's National Ballet School and founded the Kaha Dance Theatre, now celebrating its 20th year. Smith is a member of the Order of Canada and has been the Chancellor of McMaster University since 2019. Santee, so great to have you with us in studio this week.
Thank you for having me.
And we're lucky to be catching you on a small break as you're touring your show, The Mush Hole. Many of our viewers, of course, would be familiar with that name that was given to the Mohawk Institute. But maybe for those who aren't, if you can tell us a bit, about the meaning behind it.
Well, the Mohawk Institute is in my community of Six Nations. And the community gave the nickname to the school the Mush Hole because of the fact that the students, the children, ate mush for the majority of time, even though at periods of time there was a working farm with lots of produce and orchards, they still had to eat mush. They weren't allowed to eat the farm food.
Why was this a story that you wanted to tell?
Well, it was a story that I didn't plan on telling because I have a family that went to the Mohawk Institute. My great-grandmother attended from the age of 2 until she was about 16. And then my grandfather and all of his siblings attended. And we didn't really know anything about their experience at all. And the Woodland Cultural Center, which oversees the Mohawk Institute, and the University of Waterloo had a project that they called the Mush Hole Project, which it was a call for artists to come and respond to the site, whether it was a room or the grounds, and the call came and it went because I didn't put an application forward. And then because of my history of working at the Woodland Center, they basically called and said, you have to do this, we want you to do this. And then so I agreed, because when somebody asks me of something, then I try to do it if I can. And so right away I had some ideas of what I wanted to explore. We worked in the boys' basement playroom, which was not really a playroom. At one time had a small jail cell in it. And I work with Indigenous youth from my community, Montana Summers, who's still touring with me. Callie Bomberry, who's my cousin, is also in this tour, and my daughter Santee Smith. And some of the things that I wanted to portray was the intergenerational effects. So not just about the students, but what happened to the parents or the first generation that went through and the lives that they had to lead going home.
We recently had Julian Brave Noise Cat on here, whose documentary Sugarcane about his family and the school near Williams Lake. Often these are told through documentary or through books. Why do you think song and dance and theater was a powerful way to tell this story?
Well, it's very visceral. So we are very close, especially in certain theaters where we're sitting very close to the audience and they're seeing us go through the emotions of a scene. And it really touches the heart. It activates the space and the energy of the room, and people are forced to witness what we're going through in the characters. And it takes it from an intellectual process of reading or even watching a film where you're sort of like mentally and actually opening up the body to sense and feel more. So we say it's very visceral, and so it's very impactful for audiences, and we do a lot of Q&As after, and so we're able to dialogue because we want to continue that discussion, that people go home and delve more into the history and understand a little bit more.
The Mush Hole was created using actual survivor testimony. How did you translate that into dance?
Well, I was a part of the the Woodland Center when they were having the Survivor Talk series, so I would go to all of them. All of those we're hearing survivors talk about their stories, and then interviews, personal interviews, and there's a few that I just know who they are, and one of them is Roberta Hill and her sister Dawn Hill, so we have very close connection and communication. And I also listened to lots of testimonials from the Truth and Reconciliation that were online, just to sort of see, what was the general or other experiences from other residential schools and the similarities. And so me as the creator, I have to devise, I have to think about what is the scenes that I want to portray, what is the content, and there were very pinnacle moments that people would share, experiences that happened in specific rooms. And so it became more about sharing what happened in the bricks and mortar of the school, what was tied to the boiler room, what was tied to the boys' playroom, what was tied to the classroom or the girls' dormitory or the laundry room, solitary confinement room. So we would hear these stories that happened in the place. So it was tied to the school and the colonial infrastructure of that. And so that's how I structured the scenes. It's very vignetted about specific, so there's not a storyline that is a literal storyline. We glimpses of what happened in different rooms and the intergenerational impacts of that.
The show's been around for almost a decade, I guess. Multi-award winner. What type of reaction do you get from audience members, survivors even?
It is, it's very interesting because sometimes people will say, who's your audience? And I said, well, everybody, because people come at different entry points. So at one performance, we could have survivors in the audience, intergenerational survivors. We can have people who have little to no understanding of what happened at the schools, and some with a little bit of understanding. And one performance, we had tourists coming from Europe, and they came to see the show, and we didn't know what we were coming to.
Right.
We saw this show. So there's these entry points to the work, and I think that's people will react differently. They'll interpret what they see, or they'll resonate with something, or they'll just be like, what's going on? I need to find out more. The most powerful response is when a survivor stands up and starts telling us their story, and the whole audience and everybody is just taking that time to listen to them. So those are powerful moments.
Yeah, I can see the Q&A portion of it all being a really important part of all this. And kind of speaking of that, here in Winnipeg, it's playing at the Manitoba Theatre for young people, recommended for teenagers 13 and older. Why do you think it's important for teenagers to come out and see this and talk about it after?
Well, I think it's a part of the curriculum. At a certain stage, they start talking about history, and they can handle a little bit of that darker history, and so that's important to put in the curriculum. As one of the ways to do the calls to action is to make sure that new Canadians, students, universities are continuing to educate and speak about the truths of the residential school legacy. So for us, it's very important that we are making those connections to the next generation, and just continuing to share that history.
And not something any of us in this room would have had in our high school curriculum either.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, at Six Nations, even as I was growing up, we didn't realize the extent of the trauma and the evilness that was happening inside of the schools, because like every survivor's experience across the land, it was silenced, and it was sort of shameful. You don't want to talk about it. So in that way, we didn't realize, a lot of us, how extensive the school was until after the Truth and Reconciliation. People start coming out and sharing their experiences.
Well, the show is touring again. I believe you did Toronto, and you're in Winnipeg now, and heading out to Vancouver. Not only is it the 10th anniversary of the release of the TRC's calls to action, but this year is also the reopening of the Mohawk Institute as an international museum of learning and conscience. Did any of that factor into taking the Mush Hole back on the road?
Yeah, yes it did. It's also our 20th anniversary.
Right.
So we have a lot of programming that we like to do to celebrate the work that we do, celebrate the opening of the, reopening of the school as a museum, and the 10th anniversary. So it sort of all coincided as a great time, but it's ever relevant. So we could, we joke we could be touring this for another 20 years. We'll be barely dancing, but we could do it because it's relevant. It's every time we come to it, we add a layer of information that survivors have given us. For example, when the Kamloops graves were announced, we incorporated just gestures of digging and searching layered into the piece. A survivor elder passed away this year, Six Nations, John Elliott, and he gave us the idea to put in a suitcase, because for him that was something that he always, as soon as he saw the suitcase, that he knew he had to go back to the residential school, and in fact some others had mentioned about have a small little suitcase, and so this tour we added a suitcase.
Yeah, I feel like hitting the school age kids, this could go for decades and decades. Santee, much more to talk about here, including the 20th anniversary of your company. We just need to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. We're lucky to have with us in studio this week renowned Mohawk artist and dancer Santee Smith. And Santee, we've been talking about the Mush Hole, which is on tour. And as we mentioned in the intro in the last block there, it's a special year for you as well. Kaha Dance Theatre, which you founded, is now celebrating its 20th anniversary. What does that mean for you?
Well, it's overwhelming, actually. As I reflect back, I'm just overwhelmed at all of the work that's happened, because I'm a person that's always moving forward and you're always building, and then to look back and reflect is important, but it's also it's interesting to just realize how much work has gone into the company, from our productions to our teaching to our collaborations. So it's nice to look back. And then this year is our 20th anniversary year, so we're having little mini celebrations throughout the year. And our season is the Mush Hole, remount of Skana, which is a multimedia performance work. And we also are opening the Continuance Immersive Commemoration, which is a large-scale event at the Mohawk Institute where we 3D map on the building. And so that is going to be a large-scale event.
Was there something going on 20 plus years ago when you decided that you needed to start your own company?
Yeah. Well, I have always loved dancing. And I started out dancing very young because that's just what I did. So I was one of the people who found their gift very early. As soon as I heard music, I start dancing, and people would start watching me, including my grandmother, who really encouraged me and called my dance her medicine. So that encouraged me, but I actually didn't start formal dance training until I was recovering from 2 broken legs, and I had to learn to walk 3 times. So I learned to dance 3 times over. So that stuck with me, and I trained at the National Ballet School for 6 years, and then decided at some point that, hey, I'm not going to be a dancer, and I went to university. But that calling, the passion for doing it opportunity came forward, and I continued. So I was an independent artist trying to build a career, and I had that taste of creating work that was reflective of my culture, and not performing Romeo and Juliet or Swan Lake or Sleeping Beauty. I was able to share a little bit about these stories and the culture that was really important for my community, but also for others to have awareness of. And my very first self-produced production was called Kaha. And Kaha in Ganyan means to carry. And so it's an action, but it's also a family name. So if it was a person, you would say it would be she carries. And that was my grandmother's name, because we carry names within our family. And she had just passed away, and then my daughter got her name through ceremony. So all of that life cycling and family and new baby, new mom, Gahawi, that original piece was is basically a family creation story. And from that, I was hooked. And I said, I have to do more of this.
Pretty great company creation story there as well. We've had a lot of shows with guests who've had a connection to the famed Native Earth Performing Arts Theatre, and you have a connection there as well, is that right?
Yeah, well, when I came back I was at McMaster University, and then I went to Toronto to do some more courses, and I started hanging out with Gary Farmer and at Native Earth Performing Arts. And before I came back into dance, I actually went through theater because I was interested. So I took a few theater courses, and I worked at Native Earth Performing Arts, and that really opened the door to Indigenous performance for me. And soon after that, I went back into but I don't say dance anymore. I say embodied storytelling, because it's very theatrical.
Right.
We're sharing narratives and stories, and then sometimes it's more than dance. It's theater, it's design, it's philosophy, and embodiment.
Well, we're only talking about 30 years or so there ago, but how many Indigenous dancers, choreographers were there around that time?
Hardly any, yeah. So it was just sort of bubbling up at that moment. Early in that time, through Native Earth, I got to hear about the Banff Centre for the Arts and the Indigenous Dance Project. And some founding Indigenous dancers like Alejandro Ranceria and Raul Trujillo, Renee Highway, and so they were the early contemporary dance artists. And so I attended the Aboriginal Dance Project in Banff, and that also opened the door to a lot of meeting other people who are interested in creating contemporary performance and movement and dance, traditional, contemporary, and out of that early time, many companies were born from that, including my own, because it was this sort of magical moment where everybody was together and thinking and being creative, and then they would go home with there's nothing there. So they had to start creating their own thing to keep it going.
The seeds.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, the Mushwell has an all-Indigenous cast. How has the world of dance and theater, things like that, changed in those 30 years? It
has changed a lot. There was little to no representation on Canadian stages for Indigenous dance. So it was sort of breaking the doors open and advocating for presence, representation, visibility, presentation. And so those early years were educating people about what it is, what is it? What does it look like? And battling people's expectations or stereotypes of what they would expect to see. And it's opened a lot more. We've been one of the companies that have shaken things up and continued to advocate. There's always more advocating to do, and looking back now, I can see some of the younger people that have come into my company now, they're operating and working on their own at a stage that is much more advanced and opportunities open, which didn't exist beforehand. So these early companies were pioneering space and cultivating that for the next generation of artists.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what role do you think Kaha has played in increasing that visibility in that world?
Quite a lot, especially within the dance community across the land, of the dance ecology, contemporary dance. So, and internationally as well. So we do a lot of international Indigenous collaborations, and there's a network of people similar to, you know, people here in Turtle. You kind of get to know everybody in the industry, and that's expanded internationally, and that's also something that I was very spearheading a lot, making those collaborations. So there is a next generation of artists coming out, working on their own material and own choreography. So I just think that it will just continue to grow, which is really exciting.
Good stuff. Santee, more to talk about here. We just have to step aside for one last quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is renowned Mohawk artist, dancer, storyteller, member of the Order of Canada, Santee Smith. And one thing I didn't mention there is you're also the Chancellor of McMaster University, one of your alma maters, the first Indigenous person to hold that role. One you've had since 2019 that I guess is wrapping up soon. But what has that role meant for you?
It's a great honor. It's an honorary position. So at McMaster, I'm able to, represent who I am, my closeness to McMaster and the closeness with Six Nations. And I have to be at every convocation, so people cannot graduate if I'm not there. So I have to book around my schedule, which is hard. But I enjoy it because I'm at this time where people are graduating, and it's like milestone in their lives, and so it's great to be there. And then I'm able to work in around. I have to do certain things. I chair some committees, and really it was open for me to work in any way that I wanted. And so I connected a lot with health science, Live Lab, the arts department, Indigenous studies, of course, and the Indigenous Health Learning Lodge. So it's really great to be able to make those connections and then support and be a role model for young Indigenous students to see they get a degree from an Indigenous chancellor.
Mm-hmm. Santee, as you've probably been doing a lot of reflecting this year, I guess, with all the anniversaries, more than 24 productions that you've done. Are there moments that really stick out for you during that time?
There are so many, because things are quite different. I do enjoy international collaborations. I enjoy. There's three things that have developed over the course of my artistic practice is really going into Indigenous dramaturgy and Indigenous methods, like how do we create? So it's not only to tell a story, but it's how do we tell that story? And how do we do it that's authentic to our practice and our beliefs? And that's an ongoing investigation for me. The other thing is to be able to work in land. So I've done a lot of land-based work, going into our traditional territories, working in water, and even across in New Zealand, jumping in the water and working with Maori artists. And the other is incorporating language into the work that I do, including our score, our music, what we're listening to, hearing the music, hearing the sounds, working with a lot of advisors, cultural advisors, and first language speakers to inform my practice. So it's not just to create the work, I'm just reclaiming a lot of arts and culture that, and using creativity and that's always my passion. So I'll keep doing it. Somebody said, okay, you got happy 20th anniversary. Here's to 20 more. And I was like, okay, 20 more. Here we go.
Right. I was going to say, you're still moving out west with the show here and then going home for a good nap or two. Anything else on the horizon for you, though?
I have the shows that I mentioned, but I also am a potter. So the legacy within my family, we're pottery makers. And so I'm going back to get into the clay, and I have a very large secret commission that will be announced later that I'm working on. So I go right back into the studio, but this time working with my hands.
Right on. Well, we look forward to that secret being unveiled, and hopefully we'll talk to you again then.
Okay, thank you.
Santee, congrats again on the anniversaries and quite the career, and good luck as the show continues out to the West Coast. Appreciate you taking time for us here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And that is all the time we have for the show this week. You can catch up on any episodes you may have missed by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca, or our APTN News YouTube page. All of our face-to-face episodes are also available as podcasts, including this one. You can find those wherever you download your podcasts. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here in 7 days.